Late at night, when most parking lots fall quiet, certain cars still seem awake. Streetlights cast long reflections across polished paint. Rows of modern crossovers fade into the background. But near the far edge of the lot, one shape refuses to blend in. Long hood. Short rear deck. Wide shoulders that feel planted even when the car is completely still. The silhouette is unmistakable. A Mustang. But not just any Mustang. This one carries a name that echoes through American car culture. Bullitt. A name that doesn't scream. A name that doesn't need stripes or bright colors. Just deep green paint, subtle badges, and a quiet confidence that feels almost understated. You walk closer and the proportions become clearer. The hood stretches forward like a runway. The grille is simple and clean, missing the usual pony emblem. Almost as if the car is intentionally avoiding attention. But enthusiasts know exactly what it is. Because the Bullitt isn't about decoration. It's about something hiding underneath that long hood. You reach for the door handle. The cabin greets you with dark leather, aluminum pedals, and a manual shifter rising proudly from the center console. No flashy gimmicks. No unnecessary drama. Just a cockpit built around driving. The key turns. For a fraction of a second there's silence. Then the engine fires. A sharp mechanical bark fills the air before settling into a deep, steady idle. Not overly loud. Not artificial. Just a smooth, confident V8 rhythm pulsing through the chassis. The exhaust note has texture. A low-frequency rumble layered with a tight metallic edge. Every few seconds the idle shifts slightly, the engine breathing through large cylinders waiting to stretch their legs. You can feel faint vibrations through the steering wheel. Through the seat. Through the shifter resting in your hand. It's alive. But the interesting thing about this engine isn't just the sound. It's the engineering philosophy behind it. Because while many modern performance cars chase speed with turbochargers and complex hybrid systems, the Bullitt approaches performance with something almost rebellious. Displacement. Natural aspiration. Mechanical simplicity refined through decades of evolution. But this engine isn't simply an old-school V8 dropped into a modern car. There's far more happening beneath that hood than tradition alone. Ford engineers spent years refining this architecture. Increasing airflow. Strengthening internal components. Reprogramming engine behavior. And quietly turning a familiar engine into something far more special. You feel it even before you see a single spec sheet. The throttle blips. The revs climb instantly. Smooth. Sharp. Almost eager. And the moment you press the accelerator for the first time, the car reveals something important. This engine isn't just powerful. It's responsive. Alive. The way it builds revs feels different from most modern engines. There's no turbo delay. No artificial torque wave. Just a rising mechanical force that grows stronger as the tachometer sweeps upward. And that sensation raises a question. What exactly makes this engine so special? What kind of engineering hides beneath the Bullitt badge? To answer that, we have to open the hood. Because the story of the Mustang Bullitt truly begins with an engine known across the performance world as the Coyote. A modern American V8 that blends old-school displacement with cutting-edge engineering. At its core, the Bullitt's engine follows a classic layout. 8 cylinders arranged in AV configuration. 2 banks of 4 cylinders set at a 90-degree angle. This layout has defined American muscle cars for generations. But the architecture inside this engine is far more advanced than traditional pushrod V8 designs. The Coyote engine uses a dual overhead camshaft layout. DOHC. That means each cylinder bank carries 2 camshafts mounted in the cylinder heads. One camshaft controls the intake valves. The other controls the exhaust valves. This setup allows extremely precise valve timing and improved airflow at high engine speeds. Each cylinder uses 4 valves. 2 intake. 2 exhaust. That means the engine breathes through 32 valves in total. More valves allow greater airflow. Greater airflow means more power potential. But airflow alone isn't enough. Material choice plays a major role in how this engine behaves under stress. The engine block itself is constructed from aluminum. Aluminum significantly reduces weight compared to traditional cast iron blocks. Less weight over the front axle improves vehicle balance. But aluminum must also be strong enough to handle high cylinder pressures. To achieve that balance, Ford engineers designed the block with deep skirts and cross-bolted main bearing caps. These reinforced structures keep the crankshaft stable even when the engine spins beyond 7,000 revolutions per minute. Inside the block lives a forged steel crankshaft. This is the rotating backbone of the engine. Each time a cylinder fires, combustion forces push down on the pistons. Those pistons transfer force through connecting rods into the crankshaft. The crankshaft converts that vertical motion into rotational energy, essentially transforming combustion into forward movement. In city traffic, the engine feels surprisingly calm. The idle remains smooth. Torque builds gradually. You barely need to rev beyond 2000 RPM to keep pace with traffic. But the moment a clear stretch of road appears, curiosity takes over. Second gear. Throttle down. The engine responds instantly. The exhaust note deepens. Air rushes through the intake. The tachometer climbs rapidly. 3000. 4000. 5,000 RPM. The sound changes as revs rise. The exhaust becomes sharper, more metallic, more aggressive. By the time the needle sweeps past 6,000 RPM, the engine feels almost electric in the way it builds power. And then it reaches the upper range. 7,000 RPM. Still pulling, still breathing, still hungry for more. This is where the Coyote architecture shines. Because the engine doesn't just deliver torque. It delivers a full power band. From low RPM drivability to high RPM excitement. But eventually curiosity demands numbers. So how much power does this engine actually produce? In most Bullitt configurations, the naturally aspirated 5.0-liter V8 delivers around 480 horsepower and roughly 420 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers place it comfortably among the strongest naturally aspirated V8 engines available in a modern production sports coupe. But numbers alone don't explain why it feels so engaging. Because the Bullitt's personality comes from the way that power is delivered. Smooth, linear, predictable. Without the sudden torque spikes common in turbocharged engines. Now imagine merging onto a highway. You're cruising at around 50 miles per hour. Traffic clears. You downshift. Throttle wide open. The engine responds immediately. Airflow surges through the intake. Combustion pressure rises inside the cylinders. And the car surges forward with a smooth, relentless pull. 60, 70, 80 miles per hour arrives quickly. Not because the engine delivers a sudden punch, but because the power builds continuously. Like a wave gathering strength as it rolls forward. And the sound. The sound is unmistakably V8. Mechanical. Layered with a subtle rasp as revs climb. The exhaust system on the Bullitt is tuned specifically to emphasize those frequencies. Active valves inside the exhaust can adjust sound levels depending on driving mode. Quiet during calm cruising. Aggressive when the engine is working hard. And then there's acceleration from a standstill. Launch control engaged. Clutch released. The rear tires briefly fight for grip. Torque floods the drivetrain. The car lunges forward. 0 to 60 miles per hour happens in roughly 4 seconds depending on traction and driver skill. But the real joy isn't the number. It's the sensation. The way the engine climbs through gears with relentless energy. But repeated hard driving brings up another important question. High-performance engines generate enormous thermal loads. During repeated acceleration runs, temperatures inside the combustion chamber can exceed 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Cooling systems must work continuously to prevent overheating. Fortunately, the Bullitt's engine was designed with sustained performance in mind. Large radiators, efficient coolant routing, and careful ECU calibration help manage heat during aggressive driving sessions. Even during repeated pulls, the engine remains stable. Power delivery stays consistent. And the cooling system keeps temperatures within safe limits. But what about long-term ownership? For many American buyers, durability matters just as much as performance. The Coyote engine has built a reputation for reliability across millions of miles driven by Mustang owners. Routine maintenance remains relatively straightforward. Oil changes, spark plugs, air filters. Nothing unusually complex. And because the engine is naturally aspirated, it avoids many of the additional stress factors associated with turbocharged engines. That simplicity can translate into long-term durability. Of course, aggressive driving increases wear on any performance engine. But overall, the Bullitt's V8 is designed to handle enthusiastic use without constant mechanical anxiety. In the real world, this engine competes with several interesting rivals. Chevrolet's Camaro SS uses a pushrod LT1 V8 with similar displacement and strong torque characteristics. Dodge's Challenger R/T offers a Hemi V8 delivering classic muscle car personality. Each engine approaches performance differently. The Camaro emphasizes compact pushrod simplicity. The Challenger leans heavily into raw displacement and torque. But the Bullitt's Coyote engine sits somewhere between those philosophies. Modern, high revving, technically advanced, yet still unmistakably American in sound and character. And that combination may be exactly what makes it special. Because in a world increasingly dominated by turbochargers and hybrid systems, the Mustang Bullitt's engine represents something increasingly rare. A naturally aspirated V8 refined to its absolute peak. It breathes freely. It revs willingly. And it delivers power with a mechanical honesty that enthusiasts immediately recognize. Every press of the throttle reminds you that performance doesn't always require complexity. Sometimes it just requires excellent engineering applied to a timeless formula. And that's exactly what lives under the hood of the Mustang Bullitt. A 5-liter V8 that balances tradition with modern precision. A power plant that rewards drivers who enjoy the relationship between engine speed, sound, and acceleration. And perhaps most importantly, an engine that still feels alive in a world increasingly defined by silent electric motors. The Bullitt may wear a legendary name, but it earns that name every time the engine fires to life. And if you appreciate engines that combine character, durability, and genuine performance engineering, this is one of the modern V8s worth understanding. Because machines like this don't just move cars forward. They keep an entire driving culture alive. And if you enjoy deep dives into engines that define automotive history, make sure you're subscribed for the next breakdown.